Hello, folks. Welcome back to English 102. This is another video lecture for CRN 21940, 21971, and 21972. This is perhaps the most important video of all of them this semester because if you do not follow the directions in this video, you will likely end up with either a poor grade on an assignment or an automatic 0. So your essay 1 is coming up February 21st, the first of your 4 typewritten essays, each of which counts 20% or 2 letter grades. In the MLA quiz, which was due several weeks ago, there was a question at the very end of the quiz that said, or asked, true or false, in every sentence or instance, when you quote, paraphrase, or borrow information, you are required to cite your source and then document that source in the work cited. Is that statement true or false? And as you can see here, it is true. And this right here, this statement, question 50, forms the basis of what is, or what I call the how to avoid plagiarism rule. And so that's what this video lecture is about. It's about how to avoid plagiarism. And as you can see, this is the module or assignment for essay 1, that every module of essay 1, 2, 3, and 4 contains a step number 5, which says, watch this video lecture on how to avoid plagiarism, which is this video lecture. And therefore, it forms part of your directions on how to, submit your essay. You don't just simply type it and submit it. You actually need to follow these directions in this order. So in this video lecture, I will refer to the essay guide, I will refer to the sample paper, and I'll refer to the English essay final draft checklist. All right, so here's the rule, how to avoid plagiarism. This information is in your, or everyone's Google Drive to the course. Remember that if you, let me get the student view here. If you go to the home page, at the top, there is, a link here that says, bookmark our course Google Drive. If you click on that link, it will take you to all of the folders in this Google Drive. You don't need to be signed in to access it. I happen to be signed in to Google right now because that's how I access my Zoom on which I record these video lectures, but these are freely available folders. And for this video lecture, I'll be using files from the MLA style folder for the sample paper and also this plagiarism folder. But inside of this is, this folder here is a bunch of information and actual, as you can see, samples of real student essays in the past. I've made them anonymous with my markings and gradings of how these samples become plagiarism. So this document that I just opened up a second ago is in this folder, as well as this infographic here, which I'll show you here in a second. So all of this information, again, is in this plagiarism folder, which in turn is inside of our Google Drive. So this rule here is relatively simple to follow, but you need to understand what the rule means and how to actually apply it. So I'm going to start off by breaking down the first part here, okay, and then discussing the second part. So notice that it says in every, capital letters underlined, in every instance or sentence or instance where I, one, quote, paraphrase, or borrow material. So every single time you do this, you must do two things. Notice it doesn't say or, it says and, italicized, bolded, uppercase, and double underlined. You must A, cite your source parenthetically in the text, or you could mention it by name, but typically this is what an in-text citation looks like. Smith, page 42. MLA style uses not Smith 1992 or 2001, that is APA style. MLA style uses the author and page number system. So once you've done A, you must also not forget to document the source. And by documenting, that means on the works cited page in alphabetical order, you put the actual information of where you got that quotation, paraphrase, or perhaps borrowed image, graph, chart, and you put it in the format that is required for that kind of source, whether it's a web source, or in this case, you can see here, it's a journal article or a book or some other kind of source. So that's the rule, pretty simple. A lot of students, I think, get tripped up on these two, that is paraphrasing and quoting. Quoting means, as demonstrated here, word for word or verbatim, right? That if you take, two or more words from an author, you're required to put quotation marks around them. They're not your words, they're the author's words. If, however, you do not quote word for word and instead you put it in your own words, you put the author's original in your own words, and you rewrite the original, meaning you change the sentence structure. And that's, by the way, what constitutes a paraphrase. A paraphrase is both your own words and literally restructuring the sentence or sentences of the original. It's not, you will run into plagiarism if you simply change a word here or there, and you're not allowed to do that. You have to rewrite the entire sentence structure in your own words, but keep the meaning the same, of course, right? You don't want to misrepresent your source. Borrowing the material is pretty easy to understand. It's when you take something like, a graphic, if you will, even a table, and put it into your paper. There's the sample paper that we have that is linked to in every module, right? So, if you go down to all of the modules, it'll say, follow this MLA style sample paper when formatting your essay, right? And that's this paper, okay? But in this paper, there's an example of an image that's being used. So here it is at the top of page 4, and it happens to be a cartoon illustration from the Dilbert comic strip. And you're not, just allowed to put an image or table or chart or graph, which again is borrowing information, and drop it into your paper without giving it credit. You're required to, in this case, give it a label, figure 1, right? It says the instructions over here for the sample paper illustration has a figure number. That's this right here, figure number. Has a caption. So caption is what you want your reader to know this information is about, and the source information. In this case, it's the parenthetical source information of Adams, page 106. And how do we know that means 106? Well, we, in MLA style, expect to go to the works cited page and find in alphabetical order Adams, and happens to be, in this case, the first source. And you see that it is a print source, meaning that it has page numbers, like it's an actual physical book. And therefore, in a print source, you would expect page numbers. So that's borrowing information, all right? But again, you must do both. So in that sample paper, I'll just show you how this is doing both. So this is the citing of the source. And let me, the word citing often throws some students or confuses students. In MLA style, we have this label on the last final page. It's always a separate page. And it's labeled works cited. And what that means is this is an alphabetical list. So you can see here, AD, AM, AU, an alphabetical list of works that are actually cited above in the essay, at least one time. And the English paper final draft checklist, which appears both at the, here's the essay one guide saying to follow this outline. At the bottom of this first page, there's a link to this checklist. It also appears in every single module as the final thing to do, which is to look at the checklist and make sure you've done all of the points it asks you. And so the checklist, as you can see here, asks very specific questions about your formatting, your documentation, citation, and so on. And questions 16 through 17, 18, 19, 20, they all relate specifically to points or issues about avoiding plagiarism. So going back to this sample paper, you had the source that was cited here, the cartoon, that's a citation. And then you had the student document that citation right here. So on this page, the works cited, this is called documentation. And that's exactly what the rule says. You need to cite your source. So instead of Smith 42, it was on that page for the sample paper, Adams 106. And not or, but and you need to document that source on the works cited. In this case, instead of Smith Susan, it was Adams Scott, and then this book title. Okay. So in the final draft checklist, to make sure that you've done this correctly, it asks right here, number 16, if I've included within the body text any tables or illustrations, for example, graphs, charts, or images, have I formatted and captioned them correctly according to MLA style? So before you would even move on to question number 17, you need to make sure you've done question number 16. And in this case, the sample paper shows you and tells you, all right, if you have an image or graph or chart, as we do here, it needs to have a figure number, meaning figure 1, as well as, let me go down a little bit further, this directive right here, this parenthetical, this C figure 1 in parentheses, C fig abbreviated 1, is telling your reader to physically stop where they are at the end of that sentence and then go back up and make sure that they see and read the caption, see the image and read the caption. So ideally, if you're going to use an image or graph or chart, you want it to appear on the same page where you are discussing it. So in this particular instance, the student writer has a discussion or sentence about Dilbert the cartoon. She says here, Dilbert, a popular cartoon that spoofs office culture, aptly captures how rampant recreational internet use has become in the workplace. See figure 1. So that C figure 1 is tied to this label right here, figure 1. Then you tell your reader what the caption is, what the graph or table, or in this case, a cartoon is about, and then you cite it. So if you've done that, right, you've given a figure number, including the C figure 1, you've given a caption, and you cited your source information, as it's all done here, then you can go to the checklist and say, yes, I've done number 16 correctly. Okay, let's move on. Number 17 asks, have I given credit where credit is due, whether paraphrasing, borrowing, or quoting information by following MLA style in-text citation throughout my paper? Notice throughout my paper, not just one time, right? For example, Smith 42. And then you would go back and say, okay, have I given credit where credit's due? Well, here's an example on this same page, page 4 of the sample paper, where you have a citation, right? Remember, that's not documentation, that's citation in the essay in the text. But this author, Fronheim, is being cited for this information here. And notice that what I've just highlighted here, there's not a single quotation mark. Therefore, that means this information coming from a 2005 study, salary.com, about America Online, all this is, specific information, is not a quotation, but instead is a paraphrase. Remember, part of the rule says that in every sentence or instance where I paraphrase, right, I must cite and then document. Okay, well, so here we have the citation or this paraphrase. The citation is Fronheim coming at the end of the sentence. And notice where the period falls. A period will typically fall at the end of a parenthetical citation. I say typically because there's an exception when it comes to block quotations, as I'll show you. So we've done A, right? We've cited the source. So there we go. We've done letter A. But now we need to make sure that we've documented that source. And then so we would expect to then go to the works cited page and look alphabetically on the works cited page and find Fronheim. And there it is. Okay. And this, you can tell, is a web source. Not only does it say web source, as opposed to a print source like we had above with this book here, but the cnetnews.com is the website itself, so therefore we can tell it's a web source. And this is the basic format that you should follow for a web article. It is author's last name first, then first name, so Fronheim, comma, ed, period. And then in quotation marks, the title of the article on that web page. In this case, stop reading this headline and get back to work, in quotation marks. Notice it's not italicized, it's not underlined, it's in quotation marks, because that punctuation signifies that it means it's an article. Then the title of the website itself is italicized. And notice that it's a shortened version of the website. It's not a long URL or a web address. And please, folks, do not put long URLs in your Works Cited page. When I see them, that's going to tell me that you did not listen to this video and watch this video. So I'm asking you, pleading with you, in fact, to simply just use, like here, netbus.org italicized, or cnetnews.com italicized, or eweek.com italicized, just a shortened version of the website. Do not put the whole URL or web address. I'll say it one last time. Do not put the entire URL or web address in your Works Cited entries. After the the website italicized, you have what's called the sponsor of the entire website. And as you can see here from the above entry, they're often the same, right? ePolicy Institute, but here in the CNET News example, CNET News versus CNET Networks is not exactly the same. And this is why you need to include the sponsor, even if it is the same, right? Don't just make your audience assume that it's the same. You have to include it. After the sponsor comes the date of publication. And MLA style uses a reverse order, which is to say, normally in a kind of paper formatting, you will have like this here, May 2nd, 2021. Either way is correct. That is to say, if you have May 2nd, 2001, or if you have it here, reversed 17 May or March, whatever year, either one is correct. But in the Works Cited, the formatting should be as you see it here on the sample Works Cited page, which is all of the dates are in reverse order. That is 17 Feb 2006 or 11 July 2005. Excuse me. And then after that, you have what type of source it is. That is, in this case, a web source. Again, as opposed to the print source up here. So you're either going to have print or web source. And the final thing that you have in a web entry is your date of access. So you always need to put that in there because you're telling your reader that, look, at least as of that date, this article appeared on this website because, as we know, excuse me, websites can rearrange themselves or they take down information and it may no longer be there, but at least at one point it was. Right below here, since we're looking at this page, this is an example of what we call a journal article or scholarly journal article. So as always, it begins with author's last name, first name and initial if it's there. And then again, in quotation marks, the entire title of the article. Notice that it's not underlined or not italicized, but in quotation marks. That tells us that it's the title of an article. Then italicized right after it is the title of where this article about cyber working, cyber shirking, where this article appeared or was published. The publisher's title or name in this case is the Florida Law Review. Just like there's a Harvard Law Review or Yale Law Review, all decent law schools have their own law journals that they publish. After the title comes what we call the volume and issue number. The first number represents the volume, and that typically means that that's how many years the publication has been published or in print. in this case 54. That's not always the case for that number volume. Sometimes there can be a restart up, but it's generally the case. And then the 0.2 represents what we call the issue number. So together it's volume and issue, but the issue number in this case means that it's the second iteration, if you will, of that 1 year. So let's say in the year 2002, this Florida Law Review has 4 issues that comprise collectively volume 4, issue 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in order to distinguish which issue it is, you put the 0.2 after the volume number. And of course, parenthetically, the year, colon, and then what we call the inclusive pagination, meaning the page where the article begins, the very first page, all the way to the very end, including the references or works cited sources. And of course, it's a print source because it appeared in the Florida Law Review. Now, you may have accessed this through an electronic source like JSTOR or Project Muse through the library's electronic database, which I will show you here. So part of your student services fees is these access and subscription to a bunch of high-powered journals and academic resources, which you should really be using for your, your 4 essays, and not just this course really, but for all of your college work. So these 2 first sources under links under resources, electronic databases and Lewis Library resources. These are the ones that you will use most often. And this is the Lewis Library database resource page. It's a list of alphabetical sources or databases. And the other one here, more often used because there are more in it, is the electronic database source. So many of you are taking this course either fully online or in a hybrid mode, and therefore accessing this information off of campus. If you are on campus in a computer lab or in a dorm, you should be able to automatically access this information. But if you are off campus, there's information here about what's called remote authentication. Remote meaning not on campus, right? And it's pretty simple. It's just telling you that when you come to this login screen, as they have a screenshot of, when you come to that, you need to change the G in your G number to the number 9. So think of, an upside down G, if you will. And the reason why is because this first field of your login ID does not accept letters, it only accepts numbers, right? So take your, it's telling you here if your G number G 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, then just take that G and turn it into a number 9. Excuse me. And then your password is the last 4 digits of your G number. And I recommend that when you get in there the first time that you change the last 4 digits to your own 4-digit PIN or number. But I show you what this looks like here. So I'll click on electronic databases, and there's a fairly large, you can see, alphabetical list of different academic databases and journals, okay? A common one that students at Grambling are familiar with is this one called JSTOR, which stands for Journal Storage, right? Access to journals, books, and so on. So if you were to click this link and you're off campus, it's going to take you to this login page, right? And remember, the instruction said take your G number and don't put G in, but put the number 9. and then your, login information. If I can remember mine. And so once you log in, well, even if it says I'm using Firefox here, it's not secure. It is secure. It's JSTOR. And so you can see up here, it is secure. There's a little lock, secure socket lock. So when you access these kind of, databases, you're typically presented, as you see here, with a singular search field, similar to if you were accessing, the regular Google page, like this, where you're given a single search page or search field right here. So instead of using the single or simple search or basic search, click this link over here, regardless of what database you're using, for the advanced search. But in here, you can find all kinds of excellent information. So, excuse me, my voice is shot today. Let's say you're finding or wanting to find something on, defunding the police, just you can select where you want that to be, in the abstract or in the title. I'm just going to leave it open. And it'll render, in this case, 448 articles and images, any of which you can use as a source, right, in your essay to cite and document. Here's a journal article on Breonna Taylor. Happens to come, as you can see, from the Journal of Criminal Law and Criminology, fall 2021. And you could not only, read this, but I would recommend that you download this, right? And download it to your, I would say, desktop or hard drive or folder. But the nifty thing about, a PDF version like this, where you have the actual thing, and therefore, it's a print source, right? You need to think of it like a print source. And by the way, I'm just going to zoom in here. You can see what I was describing a moment ago. Volume 111, number 4. That is related to what I was just saying here of volume 54, issue number 2. So in that particular journal, it happened to be volume 111, number 4, or issue 4. But the nifty thing about having a PDF version of these kinds of high-powered sources is you can do a quick search. So this is what going to be, roughly 30-something pages, and you may think, oh, I don't have time to read 30-something pages, right? But as you can see, if you're looking for information about defunding, right, you can do a quick control find or search, right, which is, control F, or on a Mac, command F. Here inside the browser, it's down here at the bottom. I'm going to say, so defund, every time the word defund occurs, right? So you can go right to a sentence or a page, right? And not necessarily have to read the entire thing to find what it is you're looking for. So you might be able to extract information, whether it's through a quotation or a paraphrase of this information in a very kind of quick, efficient way. So there's this information, and I want to show you that because that's kind of where I'm hoping, expecting you guys will get your information. There are, files and excuse me, data inside of our, folders for each essay. Like here, erasing racial injustice, and you click that folder, and there's already some, PDF files in here. Here's one on Black Lives Matter. And, you're certainly allowed to use these. If you watch the Essay 1 video, I used some of them to describe that topic. All right. I was setting all that up because there's a essay here that I want to show you. It's in terms of formatting, of how to do some of these formatting techniques. And this is, as you can see from the top page here, of an assignment in a senior level English course. So in this case, it's over a play called Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. And I want to teach you how to do a couple of things. One, this is how to do the page numbering. It's a pretty simple process. So page number is up here, and it's in what's called a header. You can see this kind of blue line at the top of the page creates a kind of separate section of the page that is not affected by the regular portion of the page. And you can see it's also kind of grayed out compared to the regular dark type. So let me show you how to do this. It's very simple. And the reason I'm wanting you to do this is because, again, if you look at the sample paper here, there's Orloff 7 and there's Orloff 6. And notice, by the way, if we shrink this, this is the end of the essay in the middle of page 6. So it's roughly 5 pages if you take out the cartoon. And then it starts with the works cited page on page 7. And the reason why is because the works cited is always, always, always on its separate page after the conclusion of the essay. But all of the essay pages are numbered with your surname and the page number. And how do you get that? Well, this is the technique. It's pretty simple. So it's already here, and you can see that it's, sequentially numbered, right? But I'm going to show you how to include it. So in order to do that, I'm going to erase it, get rid of it, right? And so it doesn't appear. And then you can see it's gone, okay? So step 1, I would recommend you do this at the very, very beginning of opening a new document. Is you need to put your cursor, my cursor currently is at the very beginning. You need to put your cursor at the very, 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 very beginning of your document. If you do it anywhere else, it will throw off your page number. So the cursor is at the very beginning, and then you go to Insert, and I'm using a MacBook and Word 2019. So if you're using Word in Microsoft Office through your Grambling email or on another computer, it may look slightly different, but there is always, in Microsoft Word, there's always this insert menu. Once you click this menu, go down to page numbers. So insert page numbers. Click on this and it'll bring up a little dialog box. And it's asking, okay, well, where do you want it? Do you want it at the bottom of the page or the top of the page? Well, MLA style says top right. So you click top, and it's already there on the right. And you can choose to put it on the first page or not on the first page. I kind of like it on the first page, but in either case, it will put the page in the upper right-hand corner. So you click OK, and there is the page number. Now, we're not done yet because we have to do a couple of things. So I want to show you the sample paper. Notice that the student's surname, Orloff, because her name is Anna Orloff, appears right before the page number. Also, the font face or font type of the page number and the surname is exactly the same as it is in the body text. Okay, so that's the other thing you need to do is once your page number is there, in this case, it's Calibri instead of, because if I go back here, you can see that it's Times New Roman, right? Times New Roman 12, which is sort of the standard academic college writing font face. But the page number is not in that. So just double click on here, and when you double click on it, you will highlight, as you can see here, it will highlight the number. And what you want to do is put your cursor in front of it, in front of the number, and you can see it blinking right there. And then type in your name, your surname. So in this case, Doe space. You always want that space. And you're not done yet. You need to then highlight the entire thing and then choose what type of font your body text is going to be in. So the body text, as I just showed you, was Times New Roman, which is sort of the standard, Times New Roman 12, right? So now it's in Times New Roman 12. Once you have it formatted in the same size and font as your body text, then you click anywhere outside of the header and it's done. And you'll see, once I scroll down to the other pages, that it automatically sequentially numbers the pages. So the second thing I want to show you in terms of formatting with Microsoft Word is how to get the works cited page on a separate page, right? So if I zoom out, you can see here that at the end of page 9, I believe, the essay concludes in the middle of page 9, and then on page 10, the works cited page starts. Okay. Well, how do you get the works cited page to be on its own page? Well, it's pretty simple. Just as you need to have your cursor at the very beginning of the document to insert your page number correctly, you need to have your cursor where you want the end of your essay to be. Okay, so in this case, it's right here after women. And what I'm going to undo the formatting here just to show you what has happened here is if I, for example, if I add more lines to this page, right? I'll zoom out so you can see what happens here. Once I start adding more lines, sentences, whatever, it will automatically drop the works cited page to an entirely separate page. It will always keep it on a separate page, which is what you want, right? The formatting. And the way you do that is to insert a page break, a special easy command that occurs at the very end of your document. So again, this is the end of this essay is right here, women, period. And the next thing that appears is the works cited, right? But I'm going to undo that to show you how to make this appear. So I'm going to, right? So this is what you don't want. You don't want your essay to end and then, your works cited to immediately begin. So what you want to do is you want to put your cursor where you want the break, or page break as it's called, to occur. And you want it to occur right at the very end of your essay. Once your cursor is right there at the end of your essay, then go to insert again, insert at the top. And this time you're going to go down to break. And there are different kinds of breaks. But here we want the very first one, which is called a page break. So page break, very first one. And when I do this, when I click page break, it's going to send this information to a separate page, right? Because it behind the scenes is going to create a kind of coding where it breaks into, invisibly everything from, after the period down. So insert, break, page break, and boom, there it is on a separate page. The last thing you need to do is then recenter your heading. Pretty simple. All right, one last piece of formatting information before I close this document out. And you notice how in the works cited sample paper, this, Anna Orloff paper, there's what is called a hanging indent format, right? So that means that every entry is left hanging to the left margin while all these subsequent lines are indented ½ inch. And the reason we do this, whether APA or MLA style, is you can see that our eyes can quickly scan down alphabetically to find whatever source we're looking for. So, if you're looking for K or L, right, you can, immediately go down and your eyes can find that. And therefore, this formatting is called a hanging indent. And that formatting is fairly simple to do. And there's a feature in Word to make it happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo it, undo the formatting, so you can see how it works. I'm trying to get this, there it is. All right, so if you were to submit your works cited page like this in one of the modules, I would, of course, make a note of it, and that would decrease your grade because you're not following the format, okay? So, when you're typing your paper, putting it together, you can go ahead and, put it in this flush left format, meaning everything is flush left to the, why it keeps jumping back to page 7. That is, you can, go ahead and leave it this way, because up here, you see the margin, right? And by the way, if you are not familiar with Word or you're a little rusty, you always want to view the ruler, as it's called. You see up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like literally a ruler of inches. And if your version of Word you're working with that doesn't appear on both the top and the left side, then go to View at the top, and you can see here, I currently have it checked, right? If I were to uncheck it, the ruler would disappear. That is not helpful for formatting. You actually need the ruler in there for what I'm about to show you. But it's, again, simple to have or show. You just go to View, check ruler, and boom, there it is. But let's say, you're typing your, sources like this, like one from JSTOR, that database. But this is not really the format needed. The easy way to format the hanging indent, remember, this format here, where all subsequent lines are indented 1/2 inch, is once you have everything in order, alphabetical order, you then highlight whatever it is you want to format. So now I've highlighted all of the entries on that page. And then here's where it's very simple. You simply right-click anywhere on that highlighted text, and there'll be a little dialog box that comes up. So if you right-click, you then go to paragraph. In paragraph, you're not going to format a paragraph, but Word considers anything that has a hard return after it. Hard return means, to explain coding here, it means, why does it keep doing this? That every time there's one of these, right? One of these, enter or hard returns at the end of a line, right? That it considers that its own sort of separate paragraph, if you will. But once you highlight the desired text to format like this, you right-click, go to paragraph, and in this paragraph little dialog box, there is not only the line spacing, right? And everything in MLA is double space, but there's this indentation up here called special or hanging, right? And once you click on that, it's going to automatically change everything from its flush left margin to 1/2 inch. Boom. Pretty simple. Oh, why does it keep doing that? So I'll show you that one more time. You simply highlight the desired text to format. You right-click anywhere on the highlighted text. You go to paragraph. You go to special, hanging, and then OK. There you go. All right. So that was it for the formatting of that paper. And I'm going to briefly return to the issue of plagiarizing. So one of the things that it asks in the checklist is, going to question number 18, does each source for my insect citation appear alphabetically on my works cited page? So that should seem simple enough, but what that means is you're looking at an alphabetical list, right? And so every single time in your essay that you cite a source, you need for it to appear alphabetically. So here's an example. Lane, and who's Lane? Well, in the previous page, Frederick Lane is talking about this book, right? In this book, Frederick Lane describes blah, blah, blah. So we know that the author is talking about Frederick Lane when she introduces this long block quotation, pages 3 to 4. And by the way, this is an example of where the period falls on the inside of a parenthetical citation. And that's because it's in a block quotation. But if you have Lane here, right, and you have, in this case, a quotation, right, because the rule says whenever I quote, right, I must cite my source. So the citing is mentioning Lane's name by name. That's a tongue twister. And must document that source, in this case, Lane, right? So that's citing Lane. There are the page numbers. And then that source Lane should appear alphabetically on the works cited page. And there it is, right? It's a print source, therefore page numbers. Let me give you another example. Here's one. Notice there's a parenthetical at the end there, Tam et al. Et al is the Latin abbreviation meaning and others. So notice again, this is a sentence in which there's not a single quotation mark, unlike the next one where there's this whole section is quoted. But in this one, even though it's a paraphrase, because it's not a quotation, you're still required to cite your source. So question number 18 is asking, and every single time I have, cited a source, does it also appear alphabetically on the works cited? So here's Tam. You need to make sure that Tam is on your works cited. And is it there? Yes, it is, right? So that's pretty simple if you actually do number 18. And the reverse is number 19. It's each source listed on my works cited page cited in my body text at least once. It could be 2 or 3 times, but needs to be at least once. In other words, every single one of these sources has been, because this is documenting your sources on the works cited page. Every single one of these has been cited at least once, right? Here's an example where the American Management Institute policy, it's a corporate author, it's been documented here on the works cited page, but is it actually cited or mentioned specifically by name in the essay above? Well, it is. It happens to be on the first page, right? A study by, and there's the full name, American Management Association E-Policy Institute. So instead of, John Doe or James Smith, it's the corporate authorship mentioned here. So the final documentation avoiding plagiarism question on the checklist is each source listed on my works cited page formatted completely and correctly according to MLA style based on the type of source that it is? In other words, is it a print source? Is it a web source? And you can follow the examples on this MLA style sample page here, okay? Also, if you run into problems about what kind of, sources and how do I cite it, you can not only Canvas inbox me, but there is on every single essay guide at the bottom, the end of the second page, a link to the Purdue OWL or online writing lab. If you click that link, it'll take you to a very detailed and basically like a book, a free book of MLA formatting and style, right? So if you're like, well, how do I do a works cited for a periodical or some other kind of source, right? You have to know what kind of source it is, right? And it'll give you, the basic format of information you need and then give you examples, right? Here's a newspaper example. Here's when you have an anonymous article, and that will often happen to you. You will have sources that have no, author's name. There's an example of that in the MLA style paper. It happens to be right here. Notice that, unlike say Adams, Scott, or Flynn, Nancy, that have actual author names, this one begins in quotation marks with the title of the article because there is no author's name. And that little instruction over here says list is alphabetized by author's last names or by title when a work has no author. Well, so AM, and then after AM comes AU. You should not put in anonymous, right? You don't put in anonymous at all. Instead, you alphabetize it, in this case, according to the title of the article. Well, this is documenting this authorless source, but how do you cite that above in the essay? Well, that happens to appear, I believe, on page 2 of this paper. So there's this long kind of quoted sentence but at the end, parenthetically, is listed, right, a shortened version of the title. And that's exactly what the instructions say. A source with an unknown author is cited by a shortened title. So there you have it, right? It's not the full title, but notice in quotation marks, because that tells us the reader this word belongs to a much longer version of a title. And titles, again, are in quotation marks, not underlined or italicized. So again, there is the full title of the article. So yeah, there are many ways to plagiarize, folks, and unfortunately, students, they don't want to recognize that they're, really engaging in that. But if you just simply follow this rule that I've been telling you, you won't commit this error. Inside of your plagiarism folder of the Google Drive is this infographic, and it shows you, it's a very large image, it shows you all of the various ways and severity of plagiarism, right? Like the severity meter, how serious is this, right? Going from, to it's mildly severe to, insanely severe. Let me quickly give an example of this. A common issue is what's called a ghost citation, and it's very, very severe. So if you trace this back with the line, right, go over here, and the question says, did you cite a source that doesn't exist, or did you make up what the source actually said? Like, it doesn't really exist. It's, we can't find it, and therefore it's a ghost, so to speak. If you do that, that's pretty severe. And if I catch it, and I probably will, you will get an automatic 0F, because I'm telling you not to do that. But if you simply follow the English final draft essay checklist, these points, right, you won't have committed that error. In other words, does each source for my in-text citations appear alphabetically, right? So, well, if you've actually done number 18, made sure throughout your paper that has been done, then yeah, you won't commit a ghost citation. Or number 19 is each source listed, right? It's pretty simple, like, which is to say that every single one of these, right, is a kind of one-to-one correspondence, though you can cite a source, 2 or 3 times. But every single source that's listed on the works cited has been at least one time cited in the essay above, whether, in a parenthetical or in a sentence itself. So folks, please, please, please take this rule seriously, because if you may recall, having read the syllabus, there's an entire section here that I quote from the general catalog about academic dishonesty, and one is cheating, different kinds of cheating, and of course another is plagiarism. And what happens with academic dishonesty? Well, you can receive, I could automatically assign you an F in the entire course, not just for the assignment, right? And then refer you to the dean for academic probation. It's a serious issue, folks. It's like you would be stealing intellectual property, other people's ideas and not giving them credit. And that's, part of the reason why we cite things and document them in an academic, professional way. It's, you're giving credit where credit's due. You're allowing people to fact check you in case they don't believe the facts and figures you're throwing out. Like if, you say here, as the student does, there's, 76% of companies are increased 27%. And you may go like, what? I don't really believe that. That seems kind of low or kind of high. Then you can go to this source and it's fully documented where you can find this information on the Works Cited page. You can go to this source right here, and you can verify those numbers of 76 and 21%, I think, or 12%. You can verify these figures, right? And another reason we provide this information is that if you were doing research on a project, not just this class, but any class, and you come across an article like I showed you in JSTOR, scholarly article that has its own references or cited entries, that some of those sources or references might help you, further down the line, kind of like a breadcrumb of more research. So there are legitimate reasons why we do it, not to torture you. And you're now in college, you're expected to adhere to academic standards. All right, folks, that's it for this video. I'll post this today, which is February 9th, and you should be well on your way to working on your draft of essay number 1, which is due February 21st. All right, take care. Bye.